2017, saying that we could, in fact, have a safer city if we focused our resources on people who are actually causing harm, violence, and to create a fairer justice system. And I've been the district attorney who's really emphasized that we can do both things at once. We can have fair policing and fair prosecutions without over criminalizing our communities. Many of you know, and I should say that Carlos and others have known me for a long time. I grew up in East New York in Brooklyn. I understand what it feels like growing up during the late 80s and 90s in East New York during the height of crack cocaine epidemic, gangs, and all the violence we had in our communities. Understanding the sense of lacking a sense of personal safety and security, but also feeling over policed at the same time. And so I went to law school with the goal of contributing back to public safety. And so many of the things that I've initiated during my Justice 2020 platform, which was very progressive, are the things that I think you see now that other district attorneys in the United States and in our state, in our city, are trying to do. And one of those things is protecting our immigrant community. I was the first district attorney in the United States to hire an immigration attorney to focus in on collateral consequences, to understand that our job is not to deport people for low-level contact with our justice system. And starting to do that. And as we're now facing a federal administration, a Trump administration, that's designed to cause maximum harm to communities of color and to immigrant communities, and to tear away at democracy, having a strong leader as district attorney to protect our communities, not only from the violent crime, because everyone understands that's my job, but to use my office to protect the residents of our county is something that I'm completely committed to. So I'm happy to take a lot of questions about how we can do that. But what I would say is my record has been one of a lot of success, reducing, in particular, gun violence in the county. 2024 was the safest year in Brooklyn history. I know that you don't hear that from our papers, but we had the fewest number of people ever shot in Brooklyn. But also, 4 times last year, I went to court and asked that a person who had been wrongfully convicted get their names back, get their cases vacated, and move forward. I believe that we can do both. We can move towards fairness and safety. Thank you for letting me introduce myself, and happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much. We have time for a few questions, and I also want to welcome BP President Antonio Reynoso has joined, and we'll get to him very soon. Any questions for the Zunera? Go ahead.
Don't kill me, but I have like 2 or 3 questions.
I'm sorry, what am I looking at?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's your name?
Zunera, hi. I'm in Gravesend. I'm right by Coney Island.
I see you. There you go. Okay.
I actually work for City Councilman Justin Brandon, so there's sometimes an overlap in our work and cases, and we reach out to your office. I also have a personal case in your office, and I spoke to one of your wonderful ADAs today, and he gave me so much time to explain processes. So I hope you give ADA Serrato a raise for tolerating me. But I have a few questions, and I appreciate your time. I've seen you speak at Bay Ridge Dems and other club meetings. But my first question is, so often, Brooklyn Young Democrats is hitting the streets for our endorsed candidates. And here in Southern Brooklyn, where I do a lot of my political organizing, public safety is one of the biggest things that you hear. No matter what the election is or what the election, year is, you just hear Republicans hammering Democrats on public safety. And it oftentimes is so frustrating because the numbers show Brooklyn is safe at the moment, lowest number of gun violence incidents. So I would love for you to talk about messaging and, how can we counter this when we're at the doors? How can campaigns counter this? What is the year-long communications that's necessary to really make people feel safe and realize that the numbers back that? So that's kind of my first question. And then my second question is, can you talk about your race? Are you, I know Republicans probably have a candidate against you, but what is some of the things that you're focusing on in terms of your path to victory, your key talking points, and how do you see this race shaping up for yourself?
All right,
And how
thank you.
can the young Dems help you, if endorsed?
Well, I think I'm going to tackle that first, the young Dems. I think you guys are incredibly important to the Democratic Party. When I ran in 2017, got elected in 2018, I was not endorsed by county, but I had a lot of young Dems carrying my petitions, getting me on the ballot, and supporting me. I see Seamus was here. I did have BID and IND back then, but I've always really understood that the young leadership in coming through the Democratic Party was the key to public safety in our office, in our city, in our office, because you guys generally understood it better than anyone else that a prosecutor cannot directly create safety, right? Safety comes from a combination of community, the police, the prosecutor, our community not for profits, our violence interrupters, and all the social services dealing with root cause issues that cause people to get involved in the criminal legal system. That young people have understood this for a long time because you don't believe the police are you know the answer to every issue. And so it's so important when we talk about why people don't feel safe. There's there's a whole industry, the New York Post and other papers that really are designed to create fear. It's done. It's been weaponized by the political parties. In particular, Republicans do it very well. They cause people to think that our city is completely in chaos, and unfortunately, we've also had some high um, profile incidents. We had a woman who was burned on the subway. We had historic rises in hate crimes. Anti-Semitism now. But we just 2 years ago we were a high rise in anti-Asian hate. The LGBTQ community is always under attack, and so we understand that there is real public safety concerns in our community. But one thing that myself and BP Antonio Reynoso, I know that we agree on, is that the police can't do this. They can't make us safe without being in partnership with community. And so your voices talking about these issues, talking about why you support me as DA is important because I'm not a traditional prosecutor. I'm not, we're going to throw them in jail and throw away the key and we're going to all be safer for it. I'm a DA who started, well, I was the first DA to stop prosecuting marijuana. I was the first DA to support a lot of the diversions and, the mental health courts. And so I think all of these things matter. I think things got better in Brooklyn because we've been able to build those partnerships earlier than the other city, other parts in the city. And so that's such a key piece to it. In terms of safety, we have to also, understand that we and I belong to a group of very progressive prosecutors, some of the most progressive prosecutors in America. There's about 26 of us. We get together about 3 times a year. We convene. We talk about, where we're trying to move the criminal legal system to. Some of them, the names that you would know, Larry Krasner, Kim Fox, although she's, recently retired, Chesa Boudin in San Francisco, George Gascon. What you've seen is that a number of them have been removed. George lost his election in LA. Chesa got removed in San Francisco. Kim resigned, did not run for reelection in Chicago because the pendulum has swung all the way to the right. I think I've always said that one of the mistakes my colleagues made, and this is really to your question, is we as progressives never actually made our communities understand that quality of life issues were our responsibility and our concern. That I'm always going to tell you that when there's a quality of life issue, it is the obligation of my office and me as DA to be involved in that. But where I differ is how and what the responsibility is. Like, I don't need to prosecute that case, but if there's graffiti, I need to be part of the solution to help work with sanitation, whatever organizations to clean it up. If there are issues with rampant drug use, or there's been I live in East New York, but I've also lived in Williamsburg. There was parks with needles, hypodermic needles. I can't say that's not my job. I have to go and we do a cleanup and make sure that we have a needle exchange program and we do that work. And I think progressives have lost that piece of it, that they don't own quality of life issues because they're very complicated and they're very hard to resolve. What I've done and why I think I've been successful in kind of withstanding this, besides the fact that we live in Brooklyn, is I've always said if there's a quality of life issue, I'm going to be concerned about it. So whether that's been, violent car culture, I could say that's not my responsibility. My job is violent crime. We started to do things in Brooklyn, restorative circles around how we deal with people who, drive recklessly, the scooters, the things that have caused sort of, what they call the disorder things. My office just gets involved. And with any elected official, whoever reaches out to me, I never say that's not my job. I say, okay, let me figure out who the right partners are to help you resolve this issue. I think that's been the key for me as DA, why I'm allowed to do certain things in the county, because I'm going to try to always find the most progressive solutions, but I'm never going to say, well, that's not my responsibility. I'm always going to try to figure out how to be helpful. The last piece, sorry, Carlos. The last piece is in terms of the election, I feel very strong and confident. I do not think anyone is currently running in the primary, but you just don't know until the ballots are counted, the petitions are counted.
Thank you so much, Dia Gonzalez. Really appreciate your time and speaking to us, and for seeking our endorsement. Up next, we're going to have Borough President Antonio Reynoso.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Hello, Carlos. Hello, everyone. And to the greatest DA in all of New York City, Eric Gonzalez. And I want to say that he's been doing things that folks are talking about nationally. He's been doing it for a long time, still keeping us safe. And I couldn't be prouder. So keep it up to our great DA. I hope you get this endorsement. So I want to get on camera.
And thank you so much, Borough President. I know you have an event, so thank you for taking the time to speak to us in this moment. We'll get you in and out very soon, within 10 to 12 minutes.
Can you guys see me? All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Antonio Reynoso, and I am the president of the greatest borough in the city of New York, which is Brooklyn, first and foremost. And I'm so grateful to be here along BYD to be able to speak to my candidacy. I'll just give you a little bit of background of who I am. I was born and raised in the south side of Williamsburg. For those that don't know, food stamps, welfare, Section 8. There wasn't a government subsidy that existed that my family didn't have to take advantage of just to make sure that we had a roof over our head and food in our stomach. So I'm deeply grateful for what government did for me, and I've been a dedicated public servant my entire life in trying to pay it forward. And right now I'm doing that for Brooklyn. In my time in Brooklyn, I've only made one commitment when I was running for office, and that was to make sure that I worked to make Brooklyn the safest place in all of the city for Black women to have babies, because they were dying at 8 times the rate as their white counterpart during childbirth. I've made an investment of $45 million, my entire budget for capital to our 3 public hospitals. And will now have those hospitals become the safest places for all women to have babies in Brooklyn. I'm a big nerd. care about comprehensive planning, doing a bunch of work to make sure that we look 5, 10, and 20 years down the line of what this borough should look like. And now I'm asking for your endorsement and your support because I believe that I am an elected official that has conviction over what they believe in. Right now, I think we are led by too many cowards in our leadership system here in the city of New York, and we need to get back to showing people that we know what we're doing and that what we're doing works. So thank you so much, and I'm very excited to be able to answer questions.
All right, we have time for a few questions. Raise your hand if you have any questions. I'm going once, going twice. I have a question. Okay, Zunaira, go ahead.
You first.
No, Zunaira, you go ahead.
So, one of the big things that falls under the borough president's office is community board appointments. And, when you first got elected, you really talked about diversifying the types of people that make it to community boards so they can be representative of, everyone in the community, people that take public transportation, people that are renters, young people. Can you talk about that effort? Do you feel like you've achieved that? And, how has that really played out? Have you seen like an impact in like zoning decisions and, other things like that?
Thank you, Zanara. Appreciate it. Yes, we have made a lot of progress. Not all the progress, but a lot of progress. The first thing we wanted to do was respect the fact that, thousands of people here in Brooklyn are volunteering their time to be on the community board. So we didn't remove anyone that showed up. That was the first step. If you had issues with absences, we would remove you from the community board. Outside of that, we kept you on. And as we replaced people that were not showing up, we made sure we focused on areas of transportation, areas of housing, and then just representative of their community. We wanted to make sure that the demographics on homeownership, rental, on car driving versus cycling, age, race, education level, and expertise. So we've been looking into all that. If you look at, which is foilable, and I've gotten foiled and sued because I got people that believe that I'm putting folks like housing abundance and folks that care deeply about development, putting them on the board. And I am doing that. I'm putting a bunch of people that care about housing development. I'm putting a bunch of people that care about transportation. I'm putting younger people, have added a ton of people that are under 18 to many community boards. So I'm doing the work. I got a lot of work to do. And like I said, we have term limits coming to the community board. I think after that rotation, you're going to be able to see community boards that I think are as close to representative of the community as possible. But again, I want to take it, allow for those people that have been there for 20, 30 years that have dedicated their time. I want to make sure that they're respected and wait until the term limits happens, which would be next year, starting next year.
Great. Thank you, for President Reynoso. Any other questions? I have a quick question. Actually, two of them, if you can answer them briefly. One is City of Yes. Did it go far enough, not far enough? Did you support it? And the second one is with the federal administration and ICE and what they're doing to our city, how will you use your office to protect immigrant New Yorkers against these violations of civil liberties and immigrant rights?
Yeah. So I don't think the City of Yes went far enough. I actually don't think that the City of Yes in itself was a radical change that would actually get us to a place where we could build the amount of housing that I think we need to be able to get us out of this crisis. But what it did do that I thought was deeply significant was that it showed that the city council could come together to solve for a citywide issue with a citywide solution. Council members and their member deference traditionally have made it so that it's practically impossible to solve for citywide solutions because of member deference. And this was an example that they could come together and get something done. So I thought that was more valuable than the actual content of what the City of Yes would do. We're talking about maximum. If every single part of what the City of Yes would do would be executed, that we would see 80,000 units of housing. And that is not enough. So I think it was an important thing, but I don't think it went far enough. And we got to do more on housing across the board in Brooklyn. And the other one is we don't throw parties in Borough Hall the way we used to. I don't know if people have noticed that, and that was intentional. We are a service Borough Hall. We want to make sure that we can do everything we can to start solving for the problems of people in Brooklyn. We opened up a migrant workforce authorization center in our office where you used to throw parties. We got 5,600 migrants applied for work authorization because of our office. And that means 5,600 people that are going to be able to get jobs, start their lives, and start contributing to the greater good of Brooklyn instead of making that space available for dinners and celebrations when people are suffering in our streets. It's just not how I do work. I care about service. I care about the work. So I'm hoping Brooklyn sees that yes, maybe we don't have the Wingate concert, but 5,600 people are starting their lives here in New York City in a positive way.
Thank you so much, Borough President. Is there any other final question? One last question so we can let the Borough President go back to the event. All right. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Borough President. Oh, one
Oh,
last
Joe.
Joe. All right, real quick.
Hi, so I live near Borough Park and like where Borough Park and Sunset Park meets. And I've been seeing like recently election after election, and especially now, massive community opposition towards homeless shelters, even though recently I seen flyers just being distributed about a homeless shelter whose sole purpose would be to house families. Like I think like one of the most like I think like the Republicans are mobilizing against just the idea of like homeless shelters and demonizing homeless people in a sense to stop any of these temporary housing solutions. What would your answer be to combat all this pushback from Republicans and this opposition?
Yeah, look, we just disagree foundationally on the premise of helping people, and sometimes there's no compromise there. And what we should be doing is having a conversation about equity. And we have that information. If you look at my comprehensive plan that we put in Borough Hall, you would see that we can do a better job at the distribution of homeless shelters like this all over our borough. Williamsburg, where I represent, has 14 homeless shelters, and you would be hard pressed to find one person in Williamsburg that can point out two of them, because they're not these horrible institutions that destroy communities. They're not. If anything, they're great institutions that stabilize communities. So what I would say is, in some cases, people are looking for you to lead, and I wouldn't tolerate an anti-homelessness movement in any part of this borough. I would support homeless shelters being cited equitably throughout this borough, so that we can get people back on their feet and do the work that needs to be done, Joe. So I just wouldn't negotiate. Yeah.
Thank you so
Right,
much,
thank you.
Borough President
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
You
Thank you.
reaching out to for our endorsement. Thank you so much.
No, love you guys. Take care. Spread love. Bye.
Bye. All right. Hello, everyone. So our other Borough President candidate, Kari Edwards, is running behind. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pause the recording. Okay. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for seeking our endorsement. The way we're going to do is you're going to have like 2 to 5 minutes for your intro and then 10 minutes for answering some questions from our membership.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I used to be a young Democrat, so I'm excited for this. My name is Kari Edwards. I am a lifelong Brooklynite. I've lived in this borough half a century plus. You want to do the math. 27 years of that I have worked in public service, starting my career with Assemblyman Nick Perry in 1998. I've since worked for congressmen, 2 governors, comptroller. I most recently was the vice president of external affairs for Brookdale Hospital, One Brooklyn Health System, where I saw the community in the hospital through COVID. Within my life of service, the reason why I'm looking for your endorsement is because I feel that the values that the young Dems have, the Brooklyn Young Dems have, are really aligned with what I'm a part of. I'm running against the current borough president, as everyone knows, specifically because he doesn't show up in our communities, and that we have a loss of equity, inclusion, and engagement. And so in my role as borough president, what I will do is be obsessed with constituent services, making sure every community is heard, every community is engaged with, that the needs of the different communities are addressed. Our hashtag is, one size doesn't fit all. And for me, from a healthcare standpoint, because I came from a healthcare standpoint, my expectation is the 10 safety net hospitals in Brooklyn will get $500,000 a year in capital funding. Because when I worked at Brookdale, we had MRI machines that were 25 years old, and you can't provide levels of care specifically in West, East, South, or North Brooklyn without a real strong capital project for our hospitals. As it pertains to education, I believe that every school's ceiling is built before the children get in there. And so as borough president, I will visit every middle and elementary school in my first year, seeing what the needs of the parents, the administration, as well as the students are, so that we can give those kids proper heating systems, proper cooling systems, proper yards to play in, proper software. Some of these schools have software that's 16 years old. One of my other really touching points for me is food insecurity. Many of you guys will know we have over 250,000 people that go to bed hungry at night, and yet we only have 152 food pantries in our community. And so as borough president, my expectation, again, using that $45 million a year of capital funding, is to triple the amount of food pantries we have, because that will ensure that kids, especially our seniors, do not go to school and do not go to bed hungry at night. As it pertains to housing, affordable housing has been lost in our communities. And for us, having a borough president that understands land use, understanding the real AMI of our communities, because the true average median income in Brooklyn is only $55,000 a year. And so we can't continue to build housing or to say yes to housing that are 60, 70, 90, 120% AMIs, because what we are truly doing is losing our middle class and moving out the people who have did so much for our borough. And I also want to bring back fun, right? My opponent talks about parties, but the cultural events, whether it's the Wingate or the Seaside concerts, whether it's bringing in folks into the borough hall to celebrate their culture, has been lost. And so again, my not-for-profit will be called Brooklyn Vested, and that we will raise money through public-private partnerships to give communities a good time once again. And so I'm really running on equity, inclusion, and engagement. I'm running to be in every community, go to every meeting, and just really show Brooklyn that, you need someone that will show up. And I'm excited to do this. So my 27 years of government, I've learned so much, a lot about a lot, but I'm really excited to take on this challenge and be the next borough president.
Thank you so much for that. Any questions from the group?
Could I ask? I can't figure out how to do the hand raising.
Sure.
Thing.
Go ahead.
One thing that has been occurring, and this is like a national issue, but it's like a state level national issue, is that anywhere where there's even like remotely any friction in the state legislatures, there's becoming like a hard time passing Medicaid funding. And I know that, like, the borough president is a local kind of like position, but just New York City is so large. In the event that there starts being like shortfalls for things like Medicaid, how would you propose that the city start handling that? And how would you handle it as borough president?
Yeah, so there is going to be a shortfall of Medicaid, right? This is one of the draconian things that the Trump administration wants to take, and it affects our seniors, and specifically, like I said, the safety net hospitals in Brooklyn. And so, giving each safety net hospital $500,000 a year for capital funding will alleviate the operational funding that goes on. Using the platform of the borough president, I wrote an op-ed to Save Downstate, and when we look at why our Medicaid has been going through issues for decades, not just now, is because the safety net hospitals, the ones that take care of the communities of color, the poor, impacted communities, they don't get the same reimbursement rates as the hospitals like NYU and Presbyterian, even though those hospitals use less of their Medicaid money. And so the advocacy that I would do really is to work with NISNA, work with UFT, work with those folks. I mean, not UFT, well, UFT, they have nurses, 1199, and really push the governor in this particular time to change the Medicaid reimbursement rates specifically for those hospitals. What that will do is give us a kind of a parachute for a little bit, but then we also have to look at how we deliver care overall. And so, the unfortunate side of the Medicaid issue is that it is a federal funded thing, but because we get certain monies from the federal government and we should have reserves, we really just have to move how the reimbursement rates are, what the operational costs are. And as borough president, I'm really well equipped from the medical standpoint, and really would, push that agenda. And I just want to say really quickly, when the second Berger Commission wanted to close hospitals in Brooklyn, Marty Markowitz convened a team of hospital experts and state legislators, which I ran that white paper, and we were able to kind of stymie some hospital closures. But using the ability I have is to use the capital money to offset operational costs.
Great. Thank you so much. I actually have two questions. One is on City of Yes. Obviously, housing is a huge issue, especially for people of all ages, young people. Young people really care about this. What is your position on City of Yes? Did it go too far? Did it not go far enough? Was it just fine? That's the first question. The second question is with ICE and the federal government administration, what they're doing to our immigrant community, Trump's deportation machine targeting even lawful residents to target people's free speech. But the deportation dragnet, what are you as borough president would do to protect our immigrant community in the face of this onslaught from ICE?
Okay, well, I'll first talk about the City of Yes. Initially, I was opposed to the City of Yes because even though there's a need or the assumption of a need to build more housing, we have to take a look at a lot of the vacant buildings that are in New York City and understand that, in Williamsburg, when you're paying $4,000 a month, it really doesn't matter, if you build something in a smaller community. When the city council changed what the AMI rates were to reflect true affordability, it opens up opportunities for people who are city workers, who are CUNY workers, to get a chance to live. So I think when the city is in a great place, but we also have to be careful who's building, because even though you're building based off of a need, you also have to look at the subsidies, right? According to the Housing Fair Act, you can't use city and state funded or money to build market rate rents. And so if we're not really going 100% affordable and 100% in terms of an AMI that's between 40 and 80%, then you're allowing these developers to walk into your community, say that I'm going to build 30 or 40% housing for you because I have the ability to build, and then all of a sudden you're still being priced out, and now you have more buildings that are really empty. And another thing that we have to really worry about is what our property tax are looking. I just got a report over 384 pages of property tax liens because folks aren't realizing that their property tax are going up, but yet their income isn't. And so when we look at City of Yes, it addressed the housing shortage, but it has not really addressed it started to address, thanks to the city council, more of the affordability metrics. So we have to be really careful, like there's not a bait and switch of saying, oh, we're going to build more in your community and still not be able to have folks live. As for the sanctuary cities, I'm an immigrant as well. Well, I'm a child of an immigrant, so I would be a dreamer more so. My parents came from Guyana and Trinidad, and we really just have to protect our community, right? It's difficult when you have a mayor who is siding, with ICE, but there are also also other things that we can put in place, right? In my office, under the general counsel's office, I'm going to have an immigration office, because when I worked for Assemblyman Nick Perry, even though he was a state representative, you can go into his office and understand the options that you have as an immigrant, to get directed to get services for your citizenship. And I intend to do something like that as well, and really to understand how do we work with true advocates to protect our children, the education of for principals to not let people into the door, even though the mayor may say it's okay, they still have to have a warrant, they still have to have probable cause. And I think we have to utilize the good of the law on our side to make that happen. And I have no problem standing for that because I am a true representation of an immigrant family who got a chance.
Thank you so much. Anya, you have a question.
Hi, thanks so much for joining so late on a Thursday. So one of the things that a borough president can do is partner with a city council member to introduce legislation. Curious to hear kind of like more rapid fire. What are three bills that you would be interested in introducing within your first few months if you're a borough president, and who would you want to partner with on those bills?
Well, so again, I don't know who's going to have committees. And I have my favorites in Brooklyn, of course, but I'll talk about the intros, right? One of the intros that I really want to talk about is implicit bias training for new recruits, and to have a police recruits. I'm sorry, because I think that some of the issues that we have around policing are levels of ignorance, right? You have someone maybe coming from Long Island, and in some cases never really experiencing some of the communities in which they're put in. I think before you graduate the academy, you should, I'm sorry, you should have implicit bias training, because even though it may not completely solve the problem, it gives you more of a pragmatic and empathetic approach to policing. One of the other things that I would like to do an intro bill is about city FEPs. So when we're talking about housing, city FEPs was raised from 1900 to 2800 under this current administration of city council. That city FEPs is used to bring folks out of shelters, give them almost a Section A voucher to get them housing. The 2800s kind of reset the market because some folks are like, oh, I could get city FEPs, so I could, charge 2800 normal rent. But what it does exclude are of individuals that make from 40 to $80,000. So what I would like to introduce a bill about city FEPs is to say that we can change the narrative of what those parameters are, and then you start to see 1505 union members of DC 37, their parks. Our CUNY staff, who are some of our lowest paid, our 1199 clerical and cafeteria workers. These folks make too much money to get Section 8, but not enough money to qualify for city FEPs. So that's something that I would like to see the parameters change. And this is more of a fun one, this last one. When we talk about renaming streets and communities for folks, they have to be dead. And there are so many people who have given their lives to these communities, and I wanted to give them their flowers. And so it's a funny, but a bill that I really care about is really trying to like give the roses. I haven't named it yet, but really allow folks who have given to their communities that are still alive, give them a chance to see their name go up on the street and immortalize them before they pass on.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? I know we're running out of time. Any final questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you so much, Kari Edwards, for joining us and for answering our questions and seeking our endorsement. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys, and I know I'm running against an incumbent, but I really would ask that you guys listen to me and know that I am ready for this role. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a great night, everyone.
All right. Good night.
All right.